Yeah.
Yes, it is very much fun to wait. Oh, we are no longer waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Thrashers Paradise, as I am joined back from my closet again with Nicholas and Steve of Skyless Aeon from London, Ontario, who will be releasing their first full length.
Yep.
Their first full length on October 2nd. Gentlemen, how are you both doing?
Oh, we're both doing... I'm doing quite good.
We're both doing pretty good, I guess.
Excellent. Now,
how are you doing, Colin?
Oh, I'm doing very good, thank you. Now let's get right into the questions. Back in 2016, you released your debut demo EP, and 4 years later, you're now releasing your first full length. What took, I guess, so long to release this full length?
It was kind of a variety of things, but mainly the writing. Some of the songs that we wrote kind of took a long time to really shape and take hold. For instance, A Conscious Decay is probably the oldest song on that album. Like, it was written, like, probably before we went into the set, just a bit after we went to record the Era Famine, we started writing that song.
I think we actually started it prior to recording the Era Famine.
We might have.
It's right around that time period. So yeah, a lot of songs we've kind of wanted to feel out, and time goes on. You think, no, actually, I think this would be better, and you make it into what you want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like, many of these songs were kind of rewritten and then rewritten like several times over for years. Dimensional Entrapment, for one, was written and rewritten like 6 times before we got the final version we have now.
Path of Desolation is probably one of the big examples of that.
Yeah, that one was actually the intro of that was actually supposed to lead into another like song with vocals and whatnot, but it just kind of like ended up becoming its own thing because I just kept adding parts to it, and I was like, oh, this part sounds cool, why don't I try doing that? I think lately, though, I've kind of gotten better at putting down an idea, and that's kind of like what I want to stick with, and that sounds good to me. I don't think who knows? I don't think I'll be changed like this. The next album, I don't think we'll be as haphazard with the songwriting as we were for the first 2 albums.
Okay, now, for both of you individually, what song are you most proud of to be coming off of this album?
I'm gonna say Drain the Sun, the title track. And what about you, Nick?
For me, it would be Dimensional Entrapment, the single we just put out. I've always felt like that song in particular kind of gives like a really good overall outlook of what our sound is. It captures like the black metal elements, the melodic death metal, and the old school, and even the more dissonant stuff we've been really like experimenting with lately.
Okay. Now, the first single you did release from this new album was Go Forth and Multiply. What kind of made the band collectively decide this is the single we want to release first?
It was always a song it was a song that was just really short and just straightforward and just punchy. And every time we played it live, always had a great reception to it. So for us, we kind of thought it was just a good idea to start off with just like a bang and like hit it running, essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly the wording I was going to say. A way to start off with a bang.
It makes sense. Now, the album artwork is very beautiful and different. What kind of inspired the choice to go with this artwork, and who is the mastermind behind it?
Well, we had the idea of the Drain the Sun concept for a while when we started shopping around for artwork, and we had a few different pieces. Nate saw that one, and that one's a Sam Nelson Stigma art piece. Like, he's done a bunch of like metal artworks, like Veil of Noth, First Fragment. I'm sure you probably know, but we saw this one piece go on sale, and we were just like, fuck, we gotta get that, like, while we still can. And we bought that like 2 years before we actually finished the album, and we kind of holding on to it for that long.
It was a matter of one of those moments where we're going through and just like, oh, That's the one. That's it.
Mm-hmm. You found your dress, essentially, with this album's cover.
Yeah.
Now, the big question I do have to ask you is, what's it like to be releasing an album kind of during this COVID time where you can't really go out and perform it to the people?
Well, I mean, the not being able to perform aspect definitely fucking sucks. There's no way to say it otherwise. However, I think it's kind of because of this whole thing, we've been kind of forced to not focus on the performing aspect as much and just kind of go straight into writing and to overall how we promote an album. Like, even recording this album, this was like our first time like going into a really professional studio and doing getting a promotion agency to work with us and help promote the release, which when we did Era Famine last time, we just kind of dropped that out of nowhere.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, it's kind of a weird it is a bit of a weird time to be releasing an album because I mean that lack of that physical interaction that would come with that. There's no real album release show this week.
Yeah. Well, with a lot of the bands that I've known that have done an album this year, a lot of them have decided to do a live stream performance over Facebook or whatever to do that. Has that kind of been in the conversations to maybe do that kind of route of doing like a live stream release party?
Well, funny enough, Skyless is going to be having our first practice session since the quarantine session next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean, the idea has crossed my mind for sure. But the thing is, like, the problem in our end would be, getting like the best possible audio quality to go along with the video.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I've tried to do it through. I've tried a couple things, trying going through like the streaming, and the latency, the sound quality. It doesn't really translate so well as being there in person. But at the same time, I guess if you have to see a silver lining in things, people are probably more like to go and just sit down and listen to a full album and really get to know it, get to feel it, get to really become one with it. So there is that going on at the same time, and I think you put your best foot forward with the album. So I'm kind of hoping that as a listening experience in itself, that you get that like sense of fulfillment with it.
True enough. Now, what is the biggest difference from the Era of Famine to now the Drain the Sun?
There's quite a few differences, but I think the main one is that I say Drain the Sun is far more like of a consistent experience overall. Like we tried to really make sure that we had songs flow together naturally, and just even parts that did that within the songwriting. Like there's a lot of attention to dynamic, and I don't know, Era of Famine is kind of a bit weird because when we wrote that, we were still kind of like messing around and trying to experiment and find like really grasp a sonic identity. I kind of came into that band, and that was Skyless is technically like my first real band that's actually done music or anything like that. So when I went in, I kind of had all these different like elements and influences that I wanted to throw in. I wanted to throw in some like heavy, like old school death metal stuff, but I also wanted to throw in a lot of tech death there and do some crazy progressive shit, but then add dissonance and maybe like a bunch of clean parts and maybe slow doom sections for dynamics, So the first album was kind of us experimenting in how do we combine all this. Whereas the second album, I think we had a lot more time to really think about the songs themselves and to think about the full album as a whole.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is how with Drain the Sun, how cohesive it is, and how it's a much more clear direction, less kind of tapping into the multifaceted. Now we do go into a bunch of different things in Drain the Sun as well,
Mhm.
but I find that the direction I think is a lot more well defined.
Yeah, there's a more consistent theme to it than there was with Era of Famine. Like Era of Famine, overall, I mean, I wouldn't say that has like a very consistent theme. Essentially, there's a lot of different, like each song kind of experiments with a few different subgenres in different ways.
Yeah.
Very schizophrenic.
Exactly.
All right. Now, for each of you individually, what does Drain the Sun mean to you?
Well, we kind of define draining the sun as the way we kind of wanted to explore that concept was we wanted to explore man's own hubris and our own self-destructive inclinations, our greediness that would basically run us dry. It would suck the life out of us, so to speak.
Yeah, and further to that, like on my side is I think each of us kind of has a certain angle on it, whereas all in different parts of exactly what Nick had mentioned, where it's different elements of your self-destructive tendencies, your ways in which you're seeing to your own, you're planting the seeds of your own demise, and in some cases, it's where you're actually actively destroying your ability for freedom, your ability for critical thought. You're starting to really zone in on basically your own self-destruction.
Okay. Now, the London scene itself is a very diverse, very wide scene. There's a lot of different genres in the London scene on its own. What makes Skyless Aeon stand out from the rest of the London scene?
It's honest. I'd say it's honestly our writing. It's just that kind of that we're kind of like a fusion of a bunch of different like extreme metal genres. We don't really stick to one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like even like when we do set lists, like there's a lot of room for us to kind of vary our set list depending on what bands we end up playing with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we still have our own kind of sonic identity.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, what do you hope the outcome is of this album to the public?
I hope it's successful. I hope that people really like it, and yeah.
I'm hoping that people's balls explode.
Ow.
In the best of ways, of course.
Okay. Sure. No, I just gotta say, I was listening to the album earlier before this, and it's nothing like I've ever heard before. It's definitely something very unique, and it stands out from the rest of the albums I've definitely heard from this year and from previous years. So you are welcome. A great album, and I look forward to the official release of it and purchasing any physical copies if you do decide to get them.
Well.
Okay. Now, but ow! Damn it! I hit my hand off my bed.
Ouch.
Yes. Now, before we, yeah.
Sorry.
So, the last question I have for you, fine gentlemen, is kind of a tradition we have here on the channel where we ask this to every first-time guest. We call it the poser question to ensure that we are talking to actual metalheads and not just some random guys we've met crossing the street one time in Kitchener, because that's happened once or twice to us all.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit. So, no, the question is simple. Who would win in a fight, Lemmy or God?
Well, trick question. Lemmy is God.
Yes! You are correct. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. Any last words you have to the people that are going to be watching this on YouTube?
Hello. I hope you really enjoy our album. Check it out. It's coming out October 2nd.
And we hope your balls explode.
Yes, that's all of them.
In the best ways, though. In the best way.
In the best of ways.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Thrashers Paradise today. And ladies and gentlemen, make sure to pre-order your copy of Skyless Aeons, Drain the Sun off of Bandcamp, and get ready to pre-save it or save it on Spotify, I think. Yeah? That's going on there?
I think that's how Spotify works.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out after 6 years.
You have music where you can find music.
Best answer possible. Until next time, everyone, keep on thrashing.
All right.
Stay tech.